She lived an unforgettable night with a stranger, and 3 years later, fate placed that same gaze right in front of the daughter he never knew existed. If you like stories like this, be sure to subscribe to this channel. We post every day. Continuing, electronic music reverberated through the walls of the Apex nightclub, one of the most sought-after spots in the South End of London, while Marina Sterling tried to convince herself that this would truly be her last night in the capital. At 24 years old, having graduated in nursing just 2 years prior, she had made the bravest decision of her life, to leave everything behind and start anew in a small town in the English countryside. But on that Friday night, surrounded by friends she had known since college, the loud music and the lights flashing at a frantic pace, it seemed impossible to believe that in less than 48 hours she would be driving down dirt roads towards Stonebrook, a small town of 20,000 inhabitants that she only knew through photos on Google Maps. "Murray, are you sure you want to do this?" Camilla shouted over the music, holding a colorful drink that glowed under the neon lights. "I mean, you have a stable job here, your friends, your whole life built." Marina smiled, but there was a melancholy in her brown eyes that her friends knew well. This was not an impulsive decision. It had been brewing for months of sleepless nights, grueling shifts at St. Thomas's Hospital, and the growing feeling that she was losing herself amidst 9 million people. London was suffocating her. The traffic, the urban crime, the coldness of relationships, everything contributed to a sense of emptiness that no salary or stability could fill. "Sometimes you need to get lost to find yourself," she replied, downing the vodka shot Julianne had just brought from the bar. The liquid burned down her throat, but it was a kind of burning she was willing to feel. "And besides, you'll visit me, right? Stonebrook is only 3 hours from here." "Of course we will," exclaimed Patricia, the most emotional of the group. "But it won't be the same. Our little family is breaking apart." Marina felt her heart tighten. Those 3 women had been her anchor during her college years and the first challenges of her professional life. Together they faced impossible exams, shifts that lasted more than 20 hours, difficult patients and uncompromising bosses. More than friends, they were chosen sisters. Leaving them was perhaps the hardest part of this entire change. "You know it's this, or I'll go completely mad," Marina said, pulling the 3 into a tight hug in the middle of the dance floor. "I need to find a place where I recognize myself, where I can truly make a difference. At the public hospital there in Stonebrook, I'll be essential, not just one more nurse among hundreds." The conversation was interrupted when a new song started, playing one of the group's favorites. They spread out across the floor, dancing with an intensity that mixed celebration and farewell. Marina let herself be carried away by the rhythm, closing her eyes and allowing the music to wash away her anxieties. For a few minutes, she managed to completely forget about the last few months of planning, the half-packed boxes in her apartment, and the uncertainty that awaited her. It was then that she felt someone watching her. She opened her eyes and met a pair of green eyes that studied her with an intensity that made her stomach flip. The man was a few meters away, leaning against the bar, holding a martini and clearly oblivious to the movement around him. He was tall, must have been around 30, with slightly disheveled brown hair, wearing a white dress shirt with rolled-up sleeves and dark jeans. There was something elegant yet relaxed in his posture, as if he was comfortable in any environment. When he realized she had noticed his gaze, he smiled. It wasn't a pretentious or predatory smile like she was used to seeing in nightclubs. It was genuine, almost shy, and that immediately intrigued her. Marina continued dancing, but now she was completely aware of his presence. She felt his green eyes following her movements, and for the first time in months she felt truly seen, not as a competent professional or a reliable friend, but as a desirable and interesting woman. When the music changed to something slower, she made an impulsive decision that surprised her. She walked towards the bar, deliberately passing close to him. The woody scent emanating from his skin was intoxicating, a mix of sandalwood and something she couldn't identify, but it made her heart race. "Dry martini," she asked, pointing to the drink in his hands. He looked at the glass and then at her, his smile widening. "With an olive." And you, let me guess, neat vodka. Marina laughed, surprised by his accuracy. How did you know? Intuition, he replied, signaling to the bartender. And by the determined way you downed that shot a few minutes ago, definitely someone who isn't afraid to face things head on. The bartender approached, and he ordered a premium vodka with ice for her. The simple yet thoughtful gesture touched her in an unexpected way. There was something genuine about that man, a rare quality amidst the superficial atmosphere of the nightclub. And you're right about me facing things head on, Marina said, accepting the drink. In fact, this is my last night in London. Tomorrow, I'm moving to the countryside. If he was surprised by the personal information, he didn't show it. Instead, his green eyes filled with curiosity. Work, family. A new beginning, she replied simply. Sometimes you need to reinvent yourself, don't you? They talked for over an hour, leaning against the bar, completely oblivious to the movement around them. He said he was a business administrator and was spending a season in London for professional reasons, but that he was also in a transitional phase. She spoke about her nursing career, about her dream of working in a smaller community where she could know each patient by name. What impressed her most was how naturally the conversation flowed. There was no need for pretense or performance. They debated films, exchanged funny work stories, discovered that they both loved to travel, but had completely different preferences for destinations. He was more adventurous. She preferred historical and cultural sites. You know, he said after she finished telling him about a disastrous trip to Lisbon where she had lost her wallet on the first day. Normally I don't approach women in nightclubs, it's not my style. And what made today different? Marina asked, genuinely curious. He was silent for a few seconds, as if searching for the right words. You dance as if no one is watching, as if the music is just yours. It's liberating to watch. The honesty of his answer completely disarmed her. All her life, Marina had been the responsible one, the reliable one, the one who always made the right choices. But here was a stranger describing a version of herself that she barely recognized, and that made her feel more alive than she had felt in months. How about we get out of here? He suggested, and something in the tone of his voice made her know exactly what he was proposing. Marina looked at her friends who were at a nearby table, clearly noticing that something was happening. Camilla gave a thumbs up, while Julianne whispered something to Patricia that made her smile. They had known Marina for years and knew she needed that night. She needed to feel desired and free before embarking on a journey that would completely change her life. Just one condition, Marina said, surprising herself with her own courage. No real names, no surnames, no phone numbers. Tonight you're martini, and I'm vodka, and tomorrow each goes their own way. He studied her for a long moment, as if trying to decipher if she was serious. When he realized she was, his smile grew even more intense. Vodka and martini, he repeated, extending his hand. Pleasure to meet you. They left the nightclub hand in hand, walking through the bustling streets of Soho until they found a discreet hotel she knew by sight, but had never entered. The lobby was elegant but not ostentatious, with soft lighting and staff who seemed accustomed to last-minute guests. In the elevator, the tension between them was palpable. He positioned himself behind her, and Marina could feel the warmth of his body, the woody scent that was already becoming familiar. When the doors opened on the 7th floor, he placed his hand on her back to guide her, and the simple touch made her skin tingle. The room was simple but comfortable, with a double bed, an armchair, and windows overlooking the busy street below. As the door closed, the reality of what was about to happen hit Marina hard. She wasn't the type of woman who had one-night stands. Her previous relationships had been long, built on a solid foundation of friendship and compatibility. But there she was, in a hotel with a stranger whose real name she didn't even know. "Changed your mind?" he asked, noticing her hesitation. Marina took a deep breath. Her whole life had been a sequence of sensible, planned decisions. But that night, the eve of a move that was in itself the most impulsive decision she had ever Maid, she wanted to feel what it was like to be completely spontaneous. "No," she replied, moving closer to him. "I'm just not very good at this." "At what?" "Adventures, impulsiveness, letting passion take control." He smiled, gently placing his hands on her face. "Then let's take it slow, no rush, we have all night." The first kiss was soft, exploratory, as if they were getting to know each other through their lips. But when Marina responded, wrapping her arms around his neck, the intensity increased. There was a growing urgency, a need neither of them could explain. They made love with a passion that surprised them both. There wasn't just physical desire, but an unexpected emotional connection. Between caresses and whispers they shared fears, dreams, and vulnerabilities they usually only revealed to close friends. It was as if the temporary nature of that encounter freed them to be completely authentic. "Where are you moving to?" he asked during a pause, drawing lazy circles on her bare arm. "Stonebrook, the English countryside. You've probably never heard of it." "I know it," he said, and something in his voice made her look at him with curiosity. "Small town, municipal hospital, agricultural, region." "Exactly. How do you know?" "I work in hospital administration. I've heard of several small towns that are modernizing their healthcare systems." Marina leaned on her elbow to observe him better. "And you? Where are you going after London?" "I'm not sure yet. I'm considering a few options. Maybe Miami, maybe the countryside too. It depends on some proposals that are being evaluated." They talked until almost dawn, interspersing words with caresses, building an intimacy that seemed impossible between two people who had met just hours before. When Marina finally fell asleep, nestled against his chest, she felt more complete than she had in years. She woke with the first rays of sun streaming through the window. He was still asleep, his face relaxed, his hair disheveled. For a moment, Marina felt like staying, like breaking the agreement they had made and discovering who he really was. But reason prevailed. That night had been perfect precisely because it was temporary, free of expectations and commitments. She got up silently, gathered her clothes, and dressed in the bathroom. Before leaving, she wrote a simple note on hotel stationery. "Thank you for a perfect night. May life be generous to you. Vodka." She left the note on the bedside table and left without looking back. The taxi she called took her back to her apartment, where the moving boxes awaited her as concrete reminders that her new life was about to begin. During the next 2 weeks, as she adapted to the routine in Stonebrook, Marina thought constantly about that night. The municipal hospital was smaller and more welcoming than she expected, with a lean but dedicated team. Her boss, Mrs. Carman, an experienced nurse in her 50s, welcomed her with maternal affection and helped her quickly integrate into the community. The town was exactly what she needed: tree-lined streets, people greeting each other on the street, a pace of life that allowed for breathing room. She rented a small house with a garden 2 blocks from the hospital, and for the first time in years, she could hear the birds singing when she woke up. But it was during the 3rd week, on a particularly busy morning shift, that Marina realized something was different. She felt nauseous at the smell of the coffee Mrs. Carman had prepared, an aroma she normally found delicious. At first, she thought it was a virus, common during periods of adaptation. But when the nausea persisted for 3 consecutive days, accompanied by increased sensitivity to smells and fatigue that didn't improve with rest, a suspicion began to form in her mind. At the town's pharmacy, she bought a pregnancy test, her hands trembling slightly as she paid Mr. John, the pharmacist who already knew her by name. She returned home at the end of her afternoon shift, the small package burning in her bag as if it were a bomb about to explode. She locked herself in the bathroom, read the instructions 3 times, and took the test. The 3-minute wait felt like 3 hours. When she looked at the result, 2 clear lines confirmed what her heart already knew. She was pregnant. Pregnant with a man whose name she didn't know, whom she had met for a single night, and who was probably thousands of miles away. A man she only knew as Martini, and who only knew her as Vodka. She sat on the cold bathroom floor and cried. They weren't just tears of fear, though fear was present. They were tears of the entire complexity of the situation, the surreal joy of carrying life within her, the terror of solitary responsibility, the inexplicable longing for someone she barely knew, and a strange sense of completeness she couldn't rationalize. That night, she called her friends in London. She told them everything. The night at the hotel, the successful move to Stonebrook, and now the unexpected pregnancy. The three were silent for a few seconds before erupting in simultaneous questions. "Marie, are you sure you don't want to try and find him?" Camilla asked. "I mean, he has a right to know, right?" "And how am I going to do that?" Marina replied, looking out the kitchen window at the lights of the tiny town. "Go to the Apex nightclub and ask if anyone remembers a guy who drank martinis. Put an ad in the newspaper looking for Martini, Green Eyes, Find Me." "You must have gotten some information about him," Julianne insisted. "Where he worked, where he was from. He said he worked in hospital administration and was passing through London. That's all. It was deliberate, remember? No personal information." Patricia, always the most practical of the group, asked the question they were all avoiding. "And do you want to have this baby?" Marina didn't hesitate. "Yes, I do. I really do. I know it wasn't planned. I know the situation is complicated, but when I saw those 2 lines, I felt a joy I can't explain, as if this was what was missing from my life without me knowing it." "Then we'll be the most present aunts in the world," Camilla declared, and Marina smiled through her tears, knowing that, regardless of anything, she wouldn't be alone on this journey. In the following weeks, Marina focused on adapting to her new reality. She scheduled an appointment with Dr. Edward, the town's obstetrician, who reassured her about her health and the babies. She told Mrs. Carman the news, who reacted with grandmotherly excitement, immediately offering to help with anything necessary. "A child is a blessing, my dear," said the older nurse, preparing a chamomile tea during a shift break. "And you'll see that this town is the perfect place to raise a child. Here, everyone looks out for everyone." And Marina discovered that Mrs. Carman was right. When her belly began to show at 4 months, the entire community mobilized to help her. Her neighbor brought baby clothes her children had worn. The baker started setting aside the freshest bread for her, and even the mayor made sure she would have full maternity leave. Throughout her pregnancy, Marina thought constantly about the man with the green eyes. During prenatal checkups, when Dr. Edward asked about the father's medical history, she invented plausible information. During sleepless nights, she imagined how he would react if he knew he was going to be a father. Sometimes she dreamed he appeared in Stonebrook, declaring eternal love and offering to form a family. Other times nightmares woke her with the image of him rejecting the child, considering her a mistake that should be forgotten. But it was the baby's movements that reassured her. Each kick, each hiccup, each change of position was a reminder that, regardless of anyone else, she and that child already formed a complete family. The birth happened on a rainy March dawn. Marina was alone at home when the contractions began, strong and regular. Mrs. Carman took her to the hospital, holding her hand throughout labor and whispering words of encouragement. "You are strong, my girl, you can do it," the older nurse repeated, as Marina breathed through the waves of pain. When the baby was finally born, after 8 hours of labor, Marina cried even before hearing her cry. She was a perfect little girl, with 10 fingers and 10 toes, brown hair, and when she finally opened her eyes, her irises were a deep, familiar green that made Marina's heart stop for a moment. "She has her father's eyes," Mrs. Carman murmured, placing the baby on Marina's chest. "She does," Marina replied, looking at her daughter with a mix of overwhelming love and sweet melancholy. "Hope. Her name is Hope." And it was in that moment, holding her daughter in her arms and looking into those green eyes that connected her forever to a night that had changed her life, that Marina knew she had made all the right decisions. No matter what the future held, she and Hope were exactly where they were supposed to be. Hope's first 3 years of life transformed Marina in ways she never imagined possible. The girl who had been born with green eyes identical to her father's proved to be a cheerful, curious, and surprisingly independent child. From the very first months, she showed a strong personality that made Marina alternate between maternal pride and moments of pure exhaustion. She doesn't stop even when she's sleeping, Mrs. Carman joked during one of the morning shifts at the hospital. Marina had returned to work when Hope was 6 months old, but with an adapted routine that allowed flexibility for her daughter's care. The municipal daycare was 2 blocks from the hospital, simplifying the daily logistics for a single mother, and Marina had adapted to single motherhood better than she expected. The first few months were challenging, especially the sleepless nights and the constant worry about doing everything right. But the community of Stonebrook embraced her in a way that made it impossible to feel truly alone. Mrs. Constance, her 70-year-old neighbor, offered to look after Hope whenever needed. Dr. Edward monitored the girl's development with paternal affection, and her friends from London visited religiously every 2 months, bringing gifts, energy, and long conversations about motherhood that lasted through entire nights. But it was during moments alone with her daughter that Marina felt most complete. When Hope was 1.5, she developed an obsession with dinosaurs that lasted until she was 3. It all started when Marina bought an illustrated book on paleontology during a trip to London to visit her friends. The girl became fascinated by the images of gigantic prehistoric reptiles and began asking her mother to read the book every night before bed. "Mommy, tell me about the Tyrannosaurus again," Hope would ask, nestled in bed holding a small rubber dinosaur she had received for her birthday. Marina would invent stories about gentle dinosaurs who cared for their young, courageous paleontologist expeditions and fantastic discoveries in distant places. Her daughter's imagination soared, and she always asked questions that challenged Marina's maternal creativity. "Mum, what if dinosaurs still existed? Where would they live?" "I think they'd like places with lots of space and nature," Marina would reply, stroking her daughter's brown hair. "Maybe on a very large farm, with rivers and mountains." "Like here in Stonebrook?" "Similar to here, yes. A peaceful place where they could live in peace." These nightly conversations became a sacred ritual between mother and daughter. It was during these moments that Marina felt the responsibility and privilege of shaping that very special little person. Hope was curious about everything: why leaves fell from trees, why the sky was blue, why some people had different colored eyes. And, inevitably, she was also curious about the father she didn't know. The first question about her father came when Hope was 2.5. They were at the playground in the central town square, watching other families playing on Sundays. The girl noticed that many children were accompanied by men they called Daddy, and her curious mind began to form questions. "Mommy, where's my daddy?" she asked, with the typical naturalness of children while swinging. Marina had prepared for this question for months, reading books on how to talk to children about unconventional families. Even so, when the moment arrived, she felt her heart race. "Your daddy lives far from here, my love. Sometimes families are different. Some families are just mommy and daughter. Some families are grandma and grandchild. Some families have 2 daddies. Every family is special in its own way." Hope processed the information with the seriousness of a child trying to understand the world. "But does he love me?" "I'm sure he does," Marina replied, and the moment she uttered those words, she realized she truly believed them. Even though she didn't know the green-eyed man beyond that single night, she had sensed a genuine capacity for love in him that made her believe that if he knew of his daughter's existence, he would love her unconditionally. "Will I ever meet him?" Marina took a deep breath. "The world is full of surprises, my princess. Sometimes people meet in the most unexpected moments." Hope seemed satisfied with the answer and returned to focusing on the swing. But Marina knew that other questions would come with time, and that she would need to be prepared to answer them with age-appropriate honesty. When Hope turned 3, Marina organized a birthday party in her backyard. She invited all the children from the daycare, neighbors, hospital colleagues, and of course her friends from London, who made sure to be there. The party's theme was, naturally, dinosaurs. "I want a Triceratops cake," Hope had declared weeks before her birthday. Marina ordered the cake from Mrs. Martha, the town's baker, who took great care with the green and brown details of the birthday girl's favorite herbivorous dinosaur. The party was a success. Hope was radiant in her green and yellow dress, running around the backyard with her little friends, playing paleontologist and directing imaginary excavations behind the house. Marina watched, everything with a heart full of gratitude. In the past 3 years, she had built not only a new life for herself, but a loving community for her daughter. "She's a special girl," commented Dr. Edward, who had arrived in the middle of the afternoon bringing a dinosaur puzzle for the birthday girl. "Intelligent, charismatic, self-assured. You're doing an incredible job as a mother." "Thank you," Marina replied, feeling her cheeks flush slightly. In the past 2 years, she and the doctor had developed a solid friendship that at times seemed to want to turn into something more. He was kind, reliable, adored Hope, and would be a logical choice for anyone seeking stability. But Marina still couldn't connect with him emotionally beyond friendship. A part of her heart remained occupied by a memory of green eyes and a woody scent. "Marina, can I ask you a personal question?" Dr. Edward approached her as they watched Hope play with the other children. "Of course. Have you ever thought about giving a new relationship a chance, so that Hope could have a present father figure?" The question was delicate, asked with affection, but Marina felt a tightening in her stomach. "Edward, you're a wonderful man, and any woman would be lucky to have you by her side, but I don't feel ready yet, and I don't want Hope to get used to someone if I'm not absolutely sure of my feelings." He nodded, understanding. "I understand, and I admire your honesty. Just know that when you feel ready, I'll be here." That night, after all the guests had left and Hope had fallen asleep exhausted from playing, Marina stood on the veranda watching the stars. Stonebrook was small enough that light pollution didn't interfere with the visibility of the night sky, and she had developed a habit of contemplating the constellations whenever she needed to think. 3 years had passed since that night at the hotel in London, 3 years during which she had transformed completely, from a young nurse unsure about the future to a confident mother and respected professional in the community. She had found her place in the world, put down deep roots, and built a life that fully satisfied her. But she still thought about him. Not every day, like at first. Sometimes weeks would pass without her mind revisiting that memory. But whenever Hope made a particularly determined expression, or when her green eyes shone with resolve, Marina was transported back to that night. She wondered where he was, if he had started a family, if he sometimes thought about the woman he had known as Vodka. The month after Hope's birthday, Marina made an important decision. It was time to move to a bigger place. The small house they had rented at first was perfect for a single mother with a baby, but Hope was growing and needed more space to play. Additionally, Marina had gotten a promotion at the hospital, taking over as nursing coordinator for the morning shift, and the better salary allowed for an upgrade in their living standard. She found a 2-bedroom apartment in a small 4-story building located on one of the town's most tree-lined streets. The building was new, well-maintained, with a playground on the ground floor and a privileged view of the mountains surrounding Stonebrook. Hope was delighted with the room that would be all hers, where she could display her growing collection of toy dinosaurs. "Mum, can I paint one wall green?" she asked during their first visit to the empty apartment. "We can paint one." "Wall green," Marina agreed, smiling. "Whichever one you want." The move happened on a sunny Saturday morning. Several neighbors and hospital colleagues offered to help, transforming what could have been a stressful day into a true camaraderie party. Mrs. Carman brought sandwiches for everyone. Dr. Edward helped carry the heavier furniture, and Mr. John, the pharmacist, insisted on assembling the crib Marina had bought for the occasional visits from her friends' daughters from London. "You're quite a family here in Stonebrook," commented Camilla, who had driven from London specifically to help with the move. "Hope will have the privilege of growing up in a community where everyone cares about everyone." "It's true," Marina agreed, watching her daughter play in the new playground with children she didn't yet know, but who had already naturally accepted her into the group. "It was the best decision I ever made in my life coming here. And the second best was having Hope," Julianne added, who was organizing books on a shelf. "Actually," Marina said, surprising her friends with her reflection, "I think having Hope was the best decision. Coming to Stonebrook was a consequence." Patricia stopped unpacking kitchen utensils and looked at her friend. "What do you mean?" Marina took a deep breath, trying to organize thoughts she had kept to herself for a long time. "When I found out I was pregnant, I had to make a decision about what kind of mother I wanted to be, and I realized I wanted to be a present, dedicated mother who knew her daughter's teachers by name, who could walk her to school, who had time to invent bedtime stories. In London, that would be impossible. I would always be rushing, always stressed, always outsourcing her care. And don't you miss the hustle and bustle of the big city? Camilla asked. Sometimes, Marina admitted. I miss our outings, the restaurants, the cultural variety. But when I look at Hope playing out there, so happy and safe, I know I made the right choice. That night, already settled in their new apartment, Marina and Hope lay on the mother's bed, looking out the window at the town lights below. It was a tradition they had developed. Whenever something important happened in their lives, they would talk about how they felt and what they hoped for the future. Mom, I like the new house, Hope said, nestled in Marina's arm. Me too, my love. And did you like the kids in the building? I did. John said he's 5 and knows everything about cars, and Anne said she'll lend me some dinosaurs she doesn't use anymore. Marina smiled. Hope had always been sociable, but her ability to quickly adapt to new situations never ceased to impress her. Hope, can I ask you a question? You can. Do you ever get sad about not having a daddy around? The girl was silent for a few seconds, as if truly considering the question. Sometimes, she replied honestly, especially when I see other kids playing with their daddies. But then I remember that I have you and that you're the best mommy in the whole world. Marina felt her eyes fill with tears. And you're the best daughter in the whole world too. Mom? Yes? If my daddy appears one day, do you think he'll like dinosaurs? The question caught Marina by surprise. Why? Because if he doesn't like dinosaurs, we might not get along. Marina laughed, kissing the top of her daughter's head. I'm sure any father would be enchanted with a smart and funny girl like you regardless of whether he likes dinosaurs or not. But it would be better if he did, right? It would be better if he did, Marina agreed. In the following months, mother and daughter adapted perfectly to their new routine. Hope loved going down to play in the playground after Marina's work and had already made friends with all the children in the building. Marina, in turn, appreciated the convenience of being closer to the town centre, which made shopping and daily errands easier. One morning, as they were getting ready to leave, Marina for the hospital and Hope for daycare, they were waiting for the elevator when the girl asked a question that would become prophetic. Mum, do you think I'll ever meet my dad? Marina was distracted, checking if she had put all the necessary things in her bag, and answered automatically, Maybe, my love. Sometimes fate likes to play with us. The elevator arrived at that moment, and the doors opened to reveal a man in a suit holding a leather briefcase. Marina distractedly looked up to greet the neighbor she didn't yet know and felt the world stop. There, just inches away, he stood. Green eyes, woody scent, the same elegant posture from 3 years ago. More mature, more serious, with slightly shorter hair, but unmistakably him. The man she had known as Martini, her daughter's father, was standing inside her building's elevator. Good morning, he said politely, as if greeting unfamiliar neighbors. Marina froze. She couldn't speak, couldn't move, couldn't process what was happening. Hope, oblivious to her mother's tension, cheerfully entered the elevator. Good morning. I live in 302 with my mommy, the girl said, with the typical spontaneity of a 3-year-old. She works at the hospital. And you, sir? He looked at Hope, attentively, and Marina saw the exact moment he noticed her green eyes identical to his own. I'm temporarily living here too. I work at St. Clair's Hospital. How cool. That's where Mommy works, Hope exclaimed. Mommy is a nurse and takes care of everyone who gets sick. What an important profession, he said, now looking directly at Marina, who finally managed to move and stepped into the elevator. The ride to the ground floor lasted only a few seconds, but to Marina it felt like hours. She was hyper-aware of everything. His scent, which was exactly as she remembered, the way he observed Hope with growing curiosity, the impossible fact that fate had reunited them in the most improbable way possible. When they reached the ground floor, Hope cheerfully said goodbye. Bye, neighbor, See you around." "Definitely," he replied, smiling at the girl. Then he looked at Marina and said, "Have a good day at work." Marina merely nodded, still unable to speak, and left the building holding her daughter's hand. Throughout the walk to daycare, her mind raced. Was it really him? Was she absolutely sure? And if it was, what did it mean? He had said he worked at St. Clair's Hospital, which was exactly where she worked. How was that possible? "Mom, are you okay?" Hope asked when they reached the daycare door. "You've been very quiet." "I am, love," Marina managed to reply. "Just thinking about work." "The new neighbor seems nice, doesn't he? He has pretty eyes just like mine." Hope's words were like a punch to Marina's stomach. Even a 3-year-old had noticed the resemblance. It couldn't be a coincidence. The universe wasn't that cruel. Throughout the morning shift, Marina could barely concentrate. Every time she heard male footsteps in the corridor, her heart raced. Every time someone mentioned any news at the hospital, she paid double attention. Until finally, during her lunch break, Mrs. Carman brought the news she was simultaneously expecting and dreading to hear. "Marina, did you hear the news? A new administrator arrived today. He's going to coordinate the modernization of the hospital. It seems he's a very qualified professional, came from London specifically for this project." "What's his name?" Marina asked, trying to keep her voice normal. "David Harrison. He came directly from private hospital administration in the capital. The management team is very excited about the changes he's going to implement." David. Finally, she knew his real name, David Harrison. The man she had known as Martini, her daughter's father, was back in her life in the most impossible way imaginable. And Marina had no idea what that meant for the future she had so carefully built for herself and Hope. The next few hours passed in a blur for Marina. She tried to maintain her normal routine at the hospital, but her mind was completely focused on the impossible fact that David Harrison, the man she had known as Martini, was working in the same place as her, living in the same building, and apparently hadn't made the connection between Nurse Marina and the woman he had known as Vodka 3 years ago. During the afternoon, she saw him twice in the hospital corridors. The first time, he was talking with Dr. Edward about patient care protocols, wearing a grey suit that enhanced his green eyes. The second time, he was analysing patient records in the administration office, focused, with that elegant posture she remembered so well. On both occasions, he greeted her politely, as he would any colleague, without any sign of special recognition. This left her even more confused. Could she be mistaken? 3 years had passed, people changed, memory played tricks. But when she looked at him, every detail confirmed her certainty. The way he held his pen, the way he tilted his head slightly when thinking, even the way he politely smiled at the staff. It was him, without a shadow of a doubt. Why didn't he recognize her then? The answer came with more careful reflection. That night, 3 years ago, she had waist-length hair, nightclub makeup, a black dress she had never worn again. Now she wore her hair in a practical bun, a white nurse's uniform, no makeup apart from a discreet lipstick. Furthermore, she had gained the curves of motherhood, a more mature expression, the confident posture of an established professional. For someone who had only known her for one night, in completely different circumstances, the transformation could be radical enough to prevent immediate recognition. When she arrived home at the end of the afternoon, Hope was waiting for her at the apartment door with Mrs. Clara, the retired neighbor who looked after the girl in the period between daycare and Marina's return from work. "Mommy!" Hope exclaimed, running to hug her. "Guess what? I met the new neighbor again. He was going up when I was going down to play." Marina's stomach clenched. "Really? And what happened?" "He asked my name. I said I'm Hope Sterling and I'm 3.5, and he said it's a very beautiful name." Marina tried to keep her expression neutral, but internally she was panicking. David now knew their daughter's full name and age. If he was truly the intelligent and observant man she remembered, it wouldn't be long before he did the math. "Anything else?" she asked, trying to sound casual. "He asked how long we'd lived here. I said we'd moved recently, but that before we lived in a little house right here in Stonebrook since I was a tiny baby." That was it. Now he had all the information needed to reach the obvious conclusion. Marina felt her legs weaken. "Are you all right, dear?" Mrs. Clara asked, noticing Marina's sudden paleness. "Yes, just a little tired from work," Marina lied. "Thank you for looking after Hope." After Mrs. Clara left, Marina tried to maintain her normal afternoon routine. She prepared a snack for Hope, helped her with a coloring activity she had brought from daycare, gave her a bath and prepared dinner. But throughout the routine, her mind worked frantically, trying to prepare for what she knew was coming. The confirmation arrived at 8 in the evening when the intercom rang. "Hello?" Marina answered, already knowing who it was. "Marina? It's David Harrison from the hospital. Can we talk?" His tone of voice was careful, but there was something underlying that confirmed her suspicions. He had made the connection. "Hope, go to your room and play for a bit. Mommy needs to talk to someone about work," she said to her daughter, trying to keep her voice calm. "Is it the new neighbor?" Hope asked, always curious. "Yes, it is. But it's grown-up talk, okay?" Hope obeyed, gathering her favorite dinosaurs and heading to her room. Marina took a few deep breaths before opening the door. David was standing in the hallway, still in his work suit, but with his tie loosened and an expression that mixed uncertainty and determination. When their eyes met, Marina saw full recognition in his green eyes. "Hello, Vodka," he said softly. Marina's legs almost gave out. Hearing that night's nickname in his voice brought back all the sensations, all the memories, all the intensity of what they had shared. She leaned against the doorframe. "Hello, Martini." They stood in silence for a few seconds, just observing each other, processing the impossibility of the situation. "May I come in?" he asked. "We need to talk." Marina nodded and stepped aside for him to enter. David came into the apartment, looking around attentively. Dinosaur toys scattered across the living room, children's drawings taped to the refrigerator. The welcoming atmosphere of a home where a caring mother raised her daughter. "She's mine," he said. It wasn't a question. Marina closed the door and turned to face him. "Yes." "Why didn't you look for me? Why didn't you tell me?" The question, though expected, still hurt. Marina sat on the sofa, gesturing for him to do the same. David remained standing, clearly agitated. "How could I look for you?" she replied, trying to keep her voice low so as not to attract Hope's attention. "You were Martini. I was Vodka. We agreed to keep everything anonymous, remember? And when I found out I was pregnant, I didn't even know where to begin to find you." "You could have tried..." "Tried what?" Marina stood up, 3 years of frustration finally finding an outlet. "Go to the Apex nightclub every week, hoping you'd show up. Put an ad in the newspaper. Hire a private detective. With what money? And based on what information? You said you worked in hospital administration and were passing through London. That's all." David ran a hand through his hair, a gesture Marina remembered from the night they spent together. I know it wasn't easy, but 3 years, Marina. 3 years of her life that I missed." "She didn't miss anything," Marina retorted, now visibly emotional. "She grew up surrounded by love in a community that adores her, with a mother who dedicated every second of her life to make her feel complete and safe. She didn't lack anything because I made sure of it." "That's not what I meant," David began, but was interrupted by the sound of bare footsteps coming from the hallway. "Mommy, is everything okay? You're talking loudly," Hope said, appearing in the living room in her nightgown, holding her favorite plush dinosaur. Marina and David fell silent immediately. The girl's presence completely changed the energy of the room. David watched her with an intensity that made Marina tense. "Everything's fine, my love," Marina said, approaching her daughter. "David and Mommy are just talking about work." "Hi, David," Hope said cheerfully, as if it were perfectly natural to find him in their living room. "Did you come to visit?" David was clearly emotional hearing his daughter pronounce his name. He crouched down to her level. "Hi, Hope. I came to talk to your mom about some things at the hospital." "Do you like dinosaurs?" she asked, holding up the toy. "This is Rex. He's a Tyrannosaurus, but he's nice. He doesn't eat anyone." I've never thought much about dinosaurs," David replied, clearly trying to keep the conversation light. "Can you tell me about them?" Hope's eyes sparkled. Of course. Do you want to see my collection? I have 15 different dinosaurs. Marina watched the interaction with a heavy heart. Seeing father and daughter talking, even without Hope knowing who he really was, stirred emotions she had tried to keep buried for 3 years. Hope, David needs to go home now, Marina interjected. It's time for you to go to bed. But I didn't even show him my Triceratops, the girl protested. Another time I promise, David said, and there was something in his voice that made Marina realize he took the promise very seriously. Now obey your mum. Hope spontaneously kissed David's cheek, as she did with all adults she liked, and went back to her room. David stood still in the spot where she had kissed him, clearly emotional. She's incredible, he murmured when they were alone again. She is, Marina agreed, allowing herself to feel maternal pride. She's a special girl. How did you explain about me? What does she... No, Marina sighed. I said her father lives far away, that sometimes families are different and that our family is just me and her. She asks about you from time to time, especially when she sees other children with their fathers. I always replied that the world is full of surprises, that perhaps one day you would meet. And did you believe that? I wanted to believe it, Marina replied honestly. For her sake. Because I thought you had the right to know her, and she had the right to know you. But over time I got used to the idea that maybe it would just be the two of us. David sat on the sofa, putting his face in his hands. Marina, I need you to know, that night, for me, wasn't just an adventure. It was special. I thought about you many times during these 3 years. It was special for me too, Marina admitted, sitting in the armchair opposite him. More special than I imagined possible. Why didn't you try to find me? Even without knowing my name, you could have... Because I was scared, Marina replied, surprising him with her honesty. Scared that you wouldn't want to take responsibility. Scared that you would see me as an adventure gone wrong. Scared that you would try to convince me to do something I didn't want to do. And most of all, scared of discovering that the man I was in love with was different from what I imagined. You were in love? The question caught Marina off guard. For 3 years, she had avoided using that word, even in thought. But there, looking into the green eyes she had come to love, even before knowing they belonged to her daughter's father, she couldn't lie. I was. Maybe I still am. David stared at her for long seconds. Marina, I want to be a part of her life. I want to get to know her. I want her to know me. I know I have no right to come here and demand anything, but she is my daughter. I know she's your daughter, Marina said. Anyone who looks at the two of you together realizes it immediately. The question is, what does that mean? It means I want to take responsibility. Financial, emotional, all of it. I don't need financial support, Marina said quickly. We're fine. I have a good job, a stable life. It's not about need, David interrupted. It's about right. Her right to have a present father, my right to participate in raising my daughter, and about you not having to carry everything alone. Marina was silent, processing the implications of what he was saying. For 3 years, she had grown accustomed to complete autonomy over her daughter's decisions. The idea of sharing that responsibility was, simultaneously, relief and terror. How would that work? She finally asked. I don't know, David admitted, but I want to find out, together, and slowly, respecting her pace. And yours. She can't know the truth yet, Marina said firmly. She needs to get used to you first. She needs to trust you. And I need to trust you too. I understand. We can start as family friends, neighbors who get along. Let the relationship develop naturally. Marina nodded. It was a sensible plan considering the circumstances. David, I need to know one thing. Why did you come to Stonebrook? Of all the towns in the country, how did you end up precisely here? He smiled for the first time since entering the apartment. A coincidence of fate, perhaps. I received a proposal to modernize the healthcare system of small towns in the English countryside. Stonebrook was on the list because of its growth potential and the need for technical improvements. When I saw the town's name, I remembered you had mentioned moving to the countryside, but I never imagined that it would be exactly here. Exactly. When I saw you in the elevator this morning, I thought I was hallucinating. It took me all day to be sure it was you. And when Hope told me her age, her full name, how long you'd lived here, all the pieces clicked into place. They were silent for a few minutes, each absorbed in their own thoughts. Marina watched David, trying to see in him the man who would be a good father to Hope. She saw determination, sincerity, but also insecurity. It was obvious that the situation scared him as much as it did her. "Marina," he finally said, "I know this is all very complicated. I know you've built an independent life, that you don't need me for anything. But I want to try. I want to be a good father to her, and I want to discover what can exist between us beyond Hope. David, I know it's not simple. I know we're different people now, that 3 years have changed a lot. But that night, it was real. What we felt was real. And maybe we can discover if there's something more." Marina felt her heart race. For 3 years she had fantasized about a reunion with Hope's father, but in her fantasies it was always him who sought her out, declaring eternal love and offering to form an instant family. Reality was more complex, more subtle, more uncertain, and in a way, that reassured her. It showed that he understood the delicacy of the situation. "Let's take it slow," she finally said. "One day at a time. You can start appearing more in our lives. As a neighbor, as a colleague. Let Hope get used to you." "And what about us?" "As for us, we'll see what happens. 3 years is a long time. We're different people now." David nodded, but there was hope in his eyes. Can I help put Hope to bed? I'd like to get to know her a little better." Marina hesitated. It was a big step, but also a natural one. All right, but slowly. They went to Hope's room, where she was arranging her dinosaurs on a low shelf. "David," she exclaimed when she saw them at the door, "you came to see my collection." "I did," he replied, entering the room and crouching down to her height. "Can you show me?" For the next 15 minutes, Hope introduced each dinosaur, recounting its characteristics, inventing stories about where they lived and what they ate. David listened with genuine attention, asking intelligent questions that showed he was truly interested in what she was. Saying, "This one is my favorite," Hope said, holding up a green triceratops. "He's a herbivore, so he didn't hurt anyone. He just ate plants and looked after his babies." "Like your mommy takes care of you," David said, looking at Marina. "Exactly. Mommy is like a mommy triceratops, strong and protective." The comparison made Marina and David smile. There was something touching in the way the girl saw the world, always through the lens of the dinosaurs she loved so much. When it was time for bed, Hope asked David to listen to the story Marina told every night. It was about a little paleontologist who discovered friendly dinosaurs in a magical forest. "Now you know my favorite stories," Hope said to David before closing her eyes. "Can you come listen other times?" David looked at Marina, who nodded almost imperceptibly. "Yes, I can," he said, "if your mum lets me." "Of course she will. Mommy likes to make friends." "Right, Mummy." "It's true," Marina agreed, kissing her daughter's forehead. "Good night, my love." When they left the room and returned to the living room, both were emotional. "She really is special," David said. "Intelligent, affectionate, self-assured. You've done an incredible job." "We did," Marina said, surprising him. "You also contributed to who she is. The curiosity, the ease with people, the confidence. That comes from you too." David was clearly touched by the generosity of the statement. "Marina, I want you to know that I won't try to change anything in your lives. I just want to fit in. Be a positive addition, not a complication." "I know," Marina said, "and I want this to work out. For her, for you, for us." When David left that night, Marina stayed awake for hours, trying to process everything that had happened. In less than 24 hours, her life had completely changed once again. The man she had fallen in love with one single night had returned, not just as a romantic memory, but as her daughter's father, as a colleague, as a neighbor. The future, which had seemed so defined that morning, was once again full of uncertain possibilities. And for the first time in 3 years, Marina allowed herself to dream that perhaps, just perhaps, her family could become complete in a way she had never dared to hope for. The following weeks established a new routine in Marina and Hope's lives, a routine that now included David's growing presence. As they had agreed, he approached gradually, always respecting the boundaries set by Marina and Hope's natural pace of acceptance. At first, their encounters were casual and brief. David would appear at the building's playground when Hope was playing after daycare, offer to help Marina with heavy groceries when he met her in the elevator, or stop to talk about dinosaurs when he crossed paths with the girl in the hallways. Always polite, always respectful, always genuinely interested in what Hope had to say. "Mommy, David knows a lot about computers," Hope recounted one afternoon, after an encounter at the playground where he had helped one of the children fix an electronic toy. "And he said he can teach me how to draw a dinosaur on the computer." "Really?" Marina said, trying to keep her tone casual while preparing dinner. "And would you like to learn?" "I would. That way I can make colorful and cool dinosaurs to stick on the refrigerator." Marina smiled. Every day she saw Hope growing fonder of David, and this left her torn between joy and apprehension. On one hand, it was wonderful to see father and daughter forming a natural and spontaneous bond. On the other, she was afraid that Hope would get too attached before David proved he was truly committed to being a long-term part of their lives. At the hospital, they maintained a cordial professional relationship, but Marina noticed that David always found excuses to pass by the nursing department to discuss procedures that didn't necessarily require her opinion or to have coffee at the same time as her. Mrs. Carmen, observant as always, didn't take long to notice. "This new administrator seems very interested in your opinions on the new protocols," she commented one morning as they organized medications. "Much more interested than would be normal for someone who has only known you for a few weeks." "He's detail-oriented," Marina replied, avoiding her colleague's curious gaze. "He wants to understand how the hospital works before implementing changes." Was all Mrs. Carmen said, but her tone made it clear she wasn't entirely convinced by the explanation. The first official invitation came on a Friday, when David knocked on the apartment door after dinner. "Marina, can I talk to you?" he asked when she opened the door. "It's, about Hope." Marina's heart raced. "Of course, come in." Hope was watching cartoons on television, dressed in her pajamas, ready for her bedtime routine. "Hi, David," she greeted cheerfully. "Do you want to watch cartoons with me?" "Actually," David said, crouching down to her height, "I came to make an invitation. On Saturday, there's going to be a science fair in the town square with an exhibition of fossils and dinosaur replicas. I thought you might like to go." Hope's eyes sparkled like Marina had never seen before. "Real dinosaurs, fossils?" "Replicas of the dinosaurs," David corrected, smiling. "But the fossils are real, and there are real paleontologists who will explain how they make discoveries." Hope looked at Marina with such an intense look of pleading that it would be impossible to deny anything. "Please, Mommy. Can I go? Please, please, please." Marina looked at David, who awaited her answer with obvious expectation. It was the first activity he had proposed specifically to spend time with Hope. A test, in a way, of what it would be like to see them interacting for hours on end. "All right," she finally said, "but only if you behave well at daycare tomorrow." "I'll behave," Hope promised, jumping with joy. "I'll be the best-behaved girl in the world." On Saturday morning, Marina watched father and daughter leave together for the first time, Hope holding David's hand naturally, talking animatedly about all the questions she would ask the paleontologists. There was something touching and frightening about that image. Touching because it was obvious how naturally they complemented each other. Frightening because Marina was letting her daughter, who still didn't know David was her father, spend the day with a man she still knew very superficially, despite everything. They returned late in the afternoon, Hope radiant and carrying a bag full of brochures, small fossil replicas and drawings she had made during the fair's activities. "Mommy, it was the most incredible day of my whole life," she exclaimed, dumping her treasures onto the living room table. The dinosaurs were enormous, the size of our living room, and the paleontologist let me touch a real T-Rex tooth. How exciting, Marina said, genuinely happy to see her daughter's joy. And how was David? Did he behave well? The question was a joke for Hope, but Marina watched her daughter's reaction carefully regarding how the day with David had been. David is the best, Hope declared. He knows the scientific names of all the dinosaurs, and he bought me a snack when I said I was hungry, and when that big boy pushed the little girl, he went over and told him he shouldn't do that. Marina looked at David, who was leaning against the doorframe, observing Hope's enthusiasm with a smile that mixed pride and paternal tenderness. And there's more, Hope continued. David said that if I want, he can take me to the town library every week to get new books about dinosaurs. Only, say if your mom lets you, David said quickly, realizing he might have promised something without consulting Marina first. Marina hesitated. Regular visits to the library meant establishing an official routine of shared time between David and Hope. It was a significant step. We can talk about that, she said diplomatically. That night, after Hope fell asleep, Marina and David walked to the small town square near the building to talk privately. How was it for you? She asked, as they sat on a bench under a tree. Incredible, David replied without hesitation. She is... Marina, I can't express what I felt seeing her so enthusiastic, hearing her ask intelligent questions, realizing how she absorbs knowledge. She's a special child. She is very special, Marina agreed. But David, do you realize the responsibility of what you're starting? She's already getting attached to you if you decide this is too complicated, if you want to leave our lives. I'm not leaving, he said firmly. Marina, I know you have reasons to doubt. I know I appeared out of nowhere and that I can't prove my intentions except by showing them through actions. But I want you to know that I am completely committed to her and to you. The last part was said softer, almost whispered, and made Marina's heart race. With me. David turned to face her. Do you think you could forget that night? Could you pretend it meant nothing? Because I can't. And now that I've found you again, that I see the incredible woman you've become, the dedicated mother you are, I don't just want to be a part of Hope's life. I want to be a part of your life too. Marina was silent, processing his words. For 3 years she had fantasized about a romantic reunion. But reality was more complex than any fantasy. David, we barely know each other. That night it was special, but it was one night. People can be completely different in different situations. Then let me show you who I am, he said. Let me truly win you over. Not for the memory of a night 3 years ago, but for the person I am today. Marina studied him in the light of the town square's lamppost. She saw sincerity in his green eyes, determination in his posture. But she also saw the vulnerability of a man who was asking for a chance to prove he deserved to be part of the lives of the 2 most important people to him. All right, she finally said, but slowly and with complete honesty. If at any moment either of us feels it's not working, we'll talk about it like responsible adults, David completed, always thinking about what's best for Hope. In the following months, a routine naturally established itself. David began picking Hope up from daycare twice a week when Marina worked an extended shift. They would go to the library, the park, or simply stay at the building's playground. On Sundays, the 3 of them often did activities together: visits to the neighboring town's zoo, picnics at the municipal park, cinema sessions with movies Hope chose. Marina watched the relationship between father and daughter develop with a mix of joy and apprehension. David was patient, attentive, genuinely interested in Hope's hobbies and opinions. He never tried to impose authority or discipline, leaving those responsibilities to Marina, but was always available to help with homework, to listen to daycare problems, or to invent educational games. And between Marina and David, a connection also grew that went beyond the physical attraction of the night that united them. They talked for hours about education, about their dreams for Hope, about life philosophies, about past experiences that shaped who they were. They discovered they shared fundamental values, the importance of honesty, hard work, respect for others. But they also had differences that complemented each other, He was more analytical, she more intuitive. He planned everything down to the smallest detail. She was more flexible and adaptable. "You make an interesting team," Mrs. Carman commented one afternoon, observing Marina and David collaborating on a project to modernize the hospital's patient record system. "What do you mean?" Marina asked. "He has the ideas, you have the practical sense. He sees the big picture, you see the human details. It's a combination that works well." Marina felt her cheeks flush, but couldn't disagree with the observation. The decisive moment came on a Thursday night, 3 months after their reunion. Hope had spent the entire day with a low fever, and Marina was worried. David appeared at the apartment door after work, bringing red berry ice cream, Hope's favorite, and offering to help. "You don't have to," Marina began. "I want to," he said simply. "Let me help." They spent the night taking turns checking Hope's temperature, offering her liquids, reading stories to calm her. When the girl finally fell asleep as her fever began to subside, around 2 in the morning, Marina and David were exhausted but satisfied. "Thank you," Marina said when they sat on the living room sofa. "You didn't have to stay, but—" "Yes, I do," David interrupted. "Not legally yet. But emotionally, I have every obligation in the world." It was at that moment that Marina knew with absolute certainty that she was in love again. Not with the romantic memory of a night 3 years ago, but with the man who had spent the night taking care of their daughter, who consistently showed that his priorities were in the right place. "David," she said softly. "I want to too. I want to try. Both of us." The smile that lit up his face was one of the most beautiful sights Marina had ever witnessed. The first kiss happened right there, on the living room sofa, at 2:30 in the morning, with the taste of cold coffee and the tenderness of two people who had learned that true love is built through consistent actions, not just momentary passions. "We need to tell her," Marina whispered when they separated. "We can't keep pretending you're just a family friend." "How do you want to do that?" "With honesty. Age-appropriate, but with honesty." The following Saturday, they carefully prepared the conversation. David brought pizza, Hope's favorite food, and after dinner, the three of them sat on the living room rug amidst cushions and toys. "Hope," Marina began, "David and Mommy have something important to tell you." The girl, who was playing with her dinosaurs, looked up with curiosity. "Are you getting married?" she asked with the typical naturalness of children. Marina and David exchanged surprised glances. "Why did you ask that?" Marina said. "Because Sophia at school said that when a daddy and mommy live together and love each other, they get married. And you love each other, right? I see you kissing when you think I'm not looking." Her daughter's observation left Marina speechless for a few seconds. Hope was much more perceptive than she imagined. "Well," Marina continued, "before we talk about marriage, there's something else. Remember you always asked about your daddy?" "David." Marina took a deep breath. "David is your daddy." Hope became very quiet, processing the information. She looked at David, then at Marina, then back at David. "Really?" she asked. "Really," David confirmed, his voice emotional. "I am your father, and I'm sorry I wasn't here from the beginning, but now that I've found you, I'll never leave your life again." Hope continued to study David's face seriously. "Is that why our eyes are the same?" "Exactly. And is that why you like the same things as me? And is that why you understand my jokes?" David smiled. "Maybe that's why, yes." To the adult's surprise, Hope showed no shock or confusion. Instead, she got up from the rug and went to David, observing him closely. "Can I call you Daddy?" The simple question made David cry. He pulled her into a tight hug. "You can. And I'll be the best daddy I can be, I promise." Hope settled into his lap, as if she had always done that. "So now we're a real family?" Marina approached the two, and Hope extended her arm to include her in the hug. "Now we're a real family," Marina confirmed. That night, Hope wanted both and David to help her with her bedtime routine. David helped her brush her teeth, while Marina laid out her pajamas. Then, the three of them squeezed onto Hope's single bed for the bedtime story. "Daddy," Hope said, testing how the word sounded, "tomorrow, can you teach me how to play that computer game you promised?" "I can," David replied, kissing the top of her head. "I can teach you anything you want to learn." "And Mommy," she continued, "now that I have a daddy, can we have a little brother or sister?" The question caught both adults completely off guard. They exchanged glances over Hope's head, both thinking that perhaps the girl was adapting too quickly to so many changes. "Let's save that conversation for when you're a little older," Marina said diplomatically. "Okay," Hope accepted easily. "But I want you to know that I would be a very responsible big sister." After Hope fell asleep, Marina and David returned to the living room, still processing how naturally everything had happened. "She's incredible," David said, "the way she accepted everything as if it were the most natural thing in the world." "I think deep down she already knew," Marina said. "Children are very intuitive. She probably felt the connection even before we explained it." "And now?" David asked. "How do we move forward?" Marina moved closer to him on the sofa. "Now we build this family day by day. We learn to be true partners, not just parents who get along. Would you be willing to move to a bigger place, so I can be more present in her routine?" The question was practical, but loaded with meaning. David was asking to formalize the family they had formed. "I would," Marina replied without hesitation, "but I want it to be our decision, not just yours. I want to participate in the choice, the planning, everything." "Our decision," David agreed, kissing her softly. "Our home, our family, our life." In the following weeks, they began looking for a house that could comfortably accommodate their new family configuration. Hope enthusiastically participated in the visits, always checking if the rooms were big enough for her dinosaur collection and if there was space in the garden to play. "This one is perfect," she declared, in a 3-bedroom house with a spacious backyard in Stonebrook's most residential area. "It even has a tree to hang a swing, and it really was perfect. Spacious bedrooms, a large kitchen, a comfortable living room, and a garden that would be ideal for Hope to play in, and, who knows, for future siblings to run around." "What do you think?" David asked Marina, while Hope explored the backyard. "I think it's where our story truly begins," she replied, intertwining her fingers with his. A month later, they were officially living together as a family. David maintained a home office to work on hospital modernization projects. Marina continued coordinating nursing, and Hope had perfectly adapted to the new routine of having 2 present parents in her daily life. "You know," Marina said one night as they watched Hope play in the backyard after dinner, "sometimes it feels like we were meant to be a family." "Maybe we were," David agreed, hugging her from behind. "Maybe that night 3 years ago wasn't just a coincidence. Maybe it was destiny preparing us for this moment." Marina nestled into his embrace, watching their daughter, create imaginary adventures among the trees in the backyard. For the first time in years, the future wasn't just a sequence of responsibilities and practical plans. It was a blank canvas where 3 people who loved each other could paint any story they wished. 6 months after moving into their new house, Marina, David, and Hope's lives had found a perfect rhythm. They woke up together every morning, had breakfast as a family, and organized themselves for the day's commitments. David took Hope to school before going to the hospital. Marina picked her up in the late afternoon, and evenings were dedicated to homework, playing in the backyard and talking about how each of their days had been. "Daddy," Hope said one Saturday morning, while helping David prepare pancakes, "when are you going to ask Mommy to marry you?" The question was asked with such naturalness that David almost dropped the bowl he was holding. Marina, who was setting the table, froze in place. "Why are you asking that?" David said, trying to keep his tone casual. "Because Sophia at school said that when a daddy and mommy live together and love each other, they get married. And you love each other, right? I see you kissing when you think I'm not looking." Marina and David exchanged glances, both trying not to laugh at their daughter's perceptive observation. "And would you like us to get married?" Marina asked, approaching the counter where father and daughter were preparing breakfast. "Of course. Then we'd be a real family, and I could wear a pretty dress and throw flowers." "We're already a real family," David said, lifting Hope to sit on his lap. "Marriage is just a party to celebrate the love that already exists." "Then let's have a party," Hope exclaimed, clapping her hands. "A big party with chocolate cake." That night, after Hope fell asleep, Marina and David talked seriously about the matter for the first time. "Do you really want to get married?" Marina asked as they walked through the backyard under the stars. It was a habit they had developed. Whenever they needed to talk about something important, they would go for a walk. "I do," David replied without hesitation. "Not just for Hope or for social convention. I want to because I love you, because I want to be sure that we will grow old together, face life's challenges as official partners." "I'm not afraid of commitment," Marina said thoughtfully. "I'm afraid it might be, I don't know, too rushed." "We've known each other for less than a year. We've been living together for 6 months. Marina," David stopped walking and turned to face her. "We've known each other for almost 4 years, even without knowing it. We have a daughter together. We've built a life together. And most importantly, every day we choose to be here. That's not rushing, that's certainty." Marina studied him in the light of the full moon. She saw complete sincerity in the green eyes that had become so familiar. She saw the man who woke up early to make dinosaur-shaped pancakes for Hope, who attended parent-teacher meetings at school, who took care of her when she had the flu and massaged her shoulders when she returned tired from a double shift. "Then yes," she said, surprising him with the direct answer. "Yes, I want to marry you." David kissed her right there in the middle of the backyard, with the same intensity as the first time, 3 years ago. But now the kiss tasted of home, of a shared future, of promises they both knew they could keep. "Just one condition," Marina said when they separated. "What?" "No grand proposals, no flash mobs or public surprises. When you officially ask me, I want it to be simple, intimate, true." "I promise," David said, but there was something in his smile that made Marina suspect he was already planning something special. The proposal happened 2 weeks later, on a Sunday afternoon. Hope was in the backyard playing paleontologist, excavating fossils David had hidden in the dirt during the week. Marina was in the kitchen preparing a snack when he approached her from behind and hugged her. "Marina." "Hmm?" she murmured, nestling into the hug. "Look outside." Through the kitchen window, Marina saw that Hope had found something different in her excavation. It wasn't one of the plastic dinosaurs David usually hid. It was a small box wrapped in protective plastic. "Daddy!" Hope shouted. "I found a real treasure." Marina looked at David, who was smiling nervously. "You didn't do that." "Yes, I did. Come, let's see what our paleontologist found." They went out into the backyard, where Hope was carefully cleaning the box with a small brush, as she had seen in documentaries about archaeological excavations. "What kind of fossil do you think it is?" David asked, crouching beside his daughter. "I don't know," Hope said, frowning in concentration. "It doesn't look like a dinosaur bone, it looks like a little box. Why don't you open it to see?" Hope obeyed, and when the box opened to reveal a simple but elegant white gold ring with a solitaire, she shouted with joy. "It's a ring! Mommy, Daddy hid a ring in our garden." Marina stood still, looking at the ring, then at David, then at her radiant daughter. The plan was simple, intimate, involving the most important person in their lives. It was perfect. David knelt, not just before Marina, but before both of them. "Marina, Hope," he began, his voice emotional, "you two have changed my life in ways I never imagined possible. Marina, you showed me what it means to love someone, not just for what we feel in the moment, but for what we build together every day. Hope, you taught me that being a father is the most incredible privilege in the world." Hope was silent, completely focused on what her father was saying. "That's why I want to ask both of you. Marina, will you marry me? And Hope, will you help me be the best husband and father I can be?" "Yes!" Hope shouted even before Marina could answer. "Mommy, say yes, say yes!" Marina was crying, but they were tears of pure happiness. "Yes," she whispered, then louder, "Yes, I accept." David placed the ring on her finger, and Hope insisted on hugging both of them at the same time, proclaiming that now they were officially the most beautiful family in the world. The wedding was scheduled for 3 months later, in a small and intimate ceremony at Stonebrook's main church. Marina didn't want anything extravagant, but she also didn't want it to be too simple. After all, it was the celebration of a story that had begun so improbably and reached such a happy ending. Her friends from London came to town a week before the wedding, transforming the house into a hub of lively preparations. Camilla took charge of the decorations, Julianne was responsible for the music, and Patricia handled all the bureaucratic details. "I can't believe you're marrying the man from the mysterious night," Camilla said during one of the preparation sessions. "It's like a modern fairy tale." "It wasn't exactly a fairy tale," Marina laughed, trying on the dress they had chosen together. Simple, elegant, perfect for an outdoor ceremony. There was a lot of fear, a lot of insecurity, a lot of worry that it would go wrong. "But in the end, it worked out," Julianne said. "And look how happy Hope is. She's literally glowing since you got engaged." It was true. Hope had personally taken on the role of junior wedding coordinator, giving opinions on flowers, helping choose the menu, and rehearsing her performance as a petal girl with professional seriousness. "Mommy," she said on the morning of the wedding as Marina got ready in the room, "you are the most beautiful bride that has ever existed in the history of the world." Marina knelt to be at her daughter's height, who was wearing a light pink dress she had chosen herself, with a small floral tiara in her hair. "You're the beautiful one, my princess. Are you ready to help Daddy and Mommy get married?" "Absolutely ready. I practiced where to step, how to throw the petals, and I even memorized a speech in case someone asks if I accept you as husband and wife." Marina laughed, hugging her daughter. "I don't think they'll ask you that, love." "But if they do, I'm prepared." The ceremony was held in the church garden, decorated with white and yellow flowers, Hope's favorite colors. About 50 people were present, hospital colleagues, neighbors, Marina's friends, some distant relatives of David who came specifically to meet his new family. When the wedding march began to play, Hope was the first to walk down the improvised aisle between the chairs, scattering rose petals with adorable seriousness. Then came Marina, walking alone as she had requested, holding a simple bouquet of daisies. David awaited her at the altar, wearing a light grey suit, and when their eyes met, both smiled with the certainty that they were doing exactly what they were supposed to be doing. The town priest, who had known Marina since she arrived in Stonebrook, conducted the ceremony with affection and humor, including references to the couple's unconventional story that drew emotional laughter from the guests. "David and Marina," he said during the homily, "you show us that the best love stories are not necessarily those that begin with a predictable ending. They are those where two people choose every day to build something beautiful together." At the time of the vows, Marina was the first to speak. "David, 3 years ago you showed me that I could be brave enough to follow my heart. Today you show me that true love is not just a feeling, it's a daily choice to grow together, to support each other, to build a family based on respect and affection. I promise to be your partner in all the adventures life brings, and I promise that our daughter will always feel that she has parents who love each other and love her unconditionally." David took a deep breath before beginning. "Marina, you gave me the most valuable gift anyone can give, a family. Not just hope, but the feeling of belonging, of having a real home. I promise to be the husband you deserve and the father our daughter deserves. I promise that when you two look at me, you will always see a man who considers your happiness more important than anything else in the world." When the priest asked if anyone had any impediment to the marriage taking place, Hope raised her hand, causing a moment of tension, followed by laughter when she declared, "I have something to say. I think they're going to be the most perfect mommy and daddy in the world, and I'm so happy to finally have a complete family." The spontaneous declaration brought tears of emotion from almost everyone present. The "I do" kiss was long and intense, full of promises for the future and gratitude for the past that had led them there. Hope applauded with such enthusiasm that she encouraged all the guests to do the same. The party was held in the community hall, decorated by Marina's friends with flowers from the church garden and simple but charming lights. The cake was chocolate with dulce de leche filling, a unanimous family choice. During the party, Hope made sure to dance with both parents, declaring that she was the luckiest daughter in the world. "And now?" David asked Marina during the newlyweds' waltz, watching Hope dance with Mrs. Carmen at a nearby table. "Now we live," Marina replied, "one day at a time, one adventure at a time, together." The honeymoon was postponed until Hope's school holidays because neither of them could imagine traveling without her. Instead, they spent a week at a seaside inn, 2 hours from Stonebrook, where Hope discovered her new passion, looking for shells that looked like marine fossils. 6 months after the wedding, on a Sunday morning, Marina woke up with familiar nausea. At first, she thought it was something she had eaten the night before. But when the nausea persisted for a week, accompanied by changes in appetite and an exaggerated sensitivity to certain smells, the suspicion began to form. The pregnancy test was taken with David by her side, both nervous and hopeful at the same time. 2 lines, Marina whispered, looking at the result. 2 lines, David confirmed, his voice choked with emotion. They hugged right there, in the bathroom, crying with happiness. It was the perfect culmination of a story that had begun so unexpectedly. "How are we going to tell Hope?" Marina asked. "In the most special way possible," David replied. "She's going to be the proudest big sister in the world." The revelation to Hope happened at dinner that same Sunday. They prepared her favorite dish, pasta with tomato sauce and cheese, and then brought out dessert, a cupcake with a candle in the shape of the number 1. "Why is there a candle?" Hope asked, curious. "Because we're celebrating," Marina said. "In 8 months our family will grow. You're going to be a big sister." Hope was completely quiet for a few seconds, processing the information. Then her eyes filled with tears of joy. "Really? I'm going to have a little brother or sister?" "Really," David confirmed. "And do you think he'll like dinosaurs too?" Marina and David laughed. "I'm sure you'll teach him or her everything about dinosaurs," Marina said. "I'm going to be the best big sister in the world," Hope declared, jumping from her chair to hug her parents. "I'm going to protect the baby. I'm going to teach him to play. I'm going to tell stories." The pregnancy proceeded smoothly. Hope participated in all the medical appointments she could, made sure to talk to her mother's belly every night before bed, and had already chosen names for the baby, depending on the sex. If it's a boy, Leonard, like Leonardo da Vinci because he was smart. If it's a girl, Helen, because it's a beautiful name. The baby was born on a sunny March morning after a quick and calm labor. It was a boy, with his father's dark hair and a serious expression that made Marina laugh, even amidst tears of emotion. "Leonard," Hope said when she held her brother for the first time, a few hours after his birth. "He's perfect. And look, Mommy, he has tiny fingers just like fossils." David observed his wife and 2 children with an emotion he could barely contain. 4 years ago, he was a solitary man who believed family wasn't for him. Now, he looked at the 3 most important people in his life and felt a gratitude so intense it almost hurt. "What are you thinking about?" Marina asked, noticing his expression. "About how life can surprise us," he replied, kissing her forehead. "About how a single night can change everything." "It wasn't a single night that changed everything," Marina said thoughtfully. "It was the choice we made, every day after that night, to build something true." 2 years later, the house was constantly filled with laughter, games, and the contagious energy of 2 children growing up, surrounded by love. Hope, now 6½, had become a dedicated and protective big sister. Leonard, at 2 years old, was a curious and smiling child who followed his sister everywhere, trying to repeat everything she did. "Daddy, look!" Hope shouted one Sunday afternoon, running to show him a drawing she had made. "I drew our family. You, Mommy, me, Leo, and look. I put a dinosaur too, because dinosaurs are part of our family." David observed the drawing, 4 human figures holding hands, smiling, with a large green triceratops beside them. It was the perfect representation of how his daughter saw their life, complete, happy, full of love and adventures. "It's beautiful, Princess," he said. taping the drawing to the refrigerator along with dozens of others that already decorated the kitchen. "Hope," Marina called from the living room, "can you come help Leonard put away the toys? Then we'll prepare dinner together." "Coming, Mummy," the girl replied, running to fulfill her big sister responsibility. David hugged Marina from behind as they watched the children playing in the living room. Leonard tried to stack colourful blocks with Hope's patient help, who explained colours and shapes like a dedicated teacher. "Do you know what I love most about our story?" Marina said, nestling into her husband's embrace. "What?" "It's that it doesn't end. Each day is a new chapter, a new adventure. Yesterday, Hope asked me if dinosaurs exist on other planets. Today, Leonard said his first complete sentence, 'Sister, play with me.' Tomorrow there will be something new, something we don't expect, something that will make us laugh or move us." David kissed her neck, breathing in the scent that had become synonymous with home. "And do you know what I love most? Tell me." "It's that no matter what adventures come, we will face them together. The four of us together." That night, after the children were asleep, Marina and David took their usual walk through the backyard. The tree where they had hung Hope's swing now also had a treehouse in its canopy, built by David during the last holidays. The garden was in bloom, with flower beds that the children helped tend. It was a real home, built with love, patience, and daily dedication. "Do you regret anything?" David asked, repeating a question they asked each other every wedding anniversary. "I regret not wearing a red dress that night at the nightclub," Marina replied, drawing a laugh from him. "Maybe you would have noticed me sooner." "I noticed you the second you stepped onto the dance floor," David said. "Blue dress, hair down, smiling as if you had just discovered a wonderful secret. And you? Any regrets?" David stopped walking and looked at the house, where the children's bedroom windows were lit by the nightlights they had installed to ward off nightmares. "I regret taking so long to get here, for wasting so many years thinking that family wasn't for me. But you arrived at the right time," Marina said, kissing him softly. "You arrived when all of us were ready." They walked back home hand in hand, as they had done every night for over 2 years. On the way they stopped to check on the children. Hope was sleeping, hugging her favorite plush dinosaur, a paleontology storybook open beside her bed. Leonard was lying on his stomach in his crib, arms outstretched, breathing peacefully. "Our family," David whispered, watching their children sleep. "Our family," Marina confirmed. And there in that house full of scattered toys, drawings on the refrigerator, photos of happy moments on the walls, and love in every corner, they knew they had built exactly the life they had dreamed of. A life that had begun with a night of passion between strangers and transformed into a story of true love, solid partnership, and a happy family. Fate had conspired to unite them through an unexpected daughter and an improbable reunion. But what kept them united every day was the conscious and constant choice to love, to forgive, to grow together, and to make every day a new opportunity to be happy. And as they prepared for sleep, embraced in the bed they had shared for over 2 years, Marina and David knew they would wake up the next day, ready for another chapter of the most beautiful story either of them had ever lived. The story of a family that found each other through love, grew stronger through difficulties, and became complete through the courage to believe that the best endings are, in fact, just new beginnings.